it's fair to say the last maybe 3, 4, 5 days, there's been a lot of criticism or online attacks, whatever you want to call it, against this big collection of October 17 parties. And it's not coming from the regime. It's coming from other groups that identify themselves as October 17. So that's a lot to get into. But I'll just start by asking you guys, since I don't really know your individual roles in particular, other than the shallow titles that you have, if you can just let me know what you do day to day within Minteshreen, other than go crazy and have breakdowns, and also the hard work, what your roles are, and maybe whether or not you see, does Minteshreen today actually mean the same thing that it did when it started?
Hi, thank you first.
Hello.
I don't think it changed or the meaning changed. Sometimes, yes, we get tired and we lose sight of why we started or what we're doing, because everything is heavy, and as just like other people around Lebanon, we get tired as well. And specifically that we're trying to make change, and we're being able to witness how very hard it is, how tough it is. You mentioned many breakdowns. We're pulling off a smile, but
no, it shows that we're all tired. Yeah.
So, but it's fine. I think for me personally, I'm gonna talk on personally, يعني.
Sure.
It never did. For me, Minteshreen was the platform. This is Malak.
He doesn't
like Minteshreen.
He doesn't actually. He's minted. Okay.
Hello, Malak.
Yeah, you're right. We should all get along. So, we have 3 days to form a list.
No.
Come here.
What was I saying?
Yeah.
Person. Okay, personally for me, Minteshreen was since the beginning when I decided to join. I talked to 5 or 6 people. I met them on the street. And when they launched Minteshreen as a political movement, I went and I was like, I want to join. When am I gonna have my call with you guys?
So you looked to join.
Yeah.
They didn't. Okay. Yeah.
Even though I met them on, we were on the ring together.
Yeah.
I knew them from the streets, but when it started to become Minteshreen as a political movement at the time, when we had our first meeting in, I don't remember what was the name of the place, in Jemaize, I think. Just to put like a vision of where we want to go.
It shows that we're all tired. Trust me, I know. We're all doing well, actually, given how bad things are.
Yeah.
But yours. So, what is your exact role today in Minteshreen?
Technically, I work with the youth. Everything related with the youth.
Okay.
I'm very devoted for this. I'm a youth person myself. I'm 23 years old. I'm very close to the students, either Lebanese university or outside. I'm myself a Lebanese university student, planning to join another university because the university actually shut down.
Yeah.
It's almost shut down, not officially.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an issue. So I've worked and I've been an activist, if I want to put it in that word, even though I don't like the word, but no. Within the university myself. So when October 17 started, I actually didn't join the street on the night of October 17 because I thought, it's gonna be just like the previous manifestations, and it's gonna end. It's not gonna be nonsense, and we're not gonna be able to pull out a real political work, because I always recall what Samir Asir used to say, and how things should actually evolve if we want to actually build up something or change.
Here you can.
So, I
spent 15 years trying to bring this man to life. I used to give storytelling tours. It was dedicated to him. So yeah, but that shows something that's quite impressive. You're 23.
Yeah.
And you're working with the youth.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone in your age group has any reason to remember Samir Asir other than if you've been curious about politics already. So I'm guessing it sounds like you were really looking to join something when the protests started.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, he was Samir Asir and Jibran Twaini were very big. When I was she 12? I don't remember how young I was. I حفظت the خطاب تبع جبران تويني, and know that I come from a family where my dad is a Kataeb and my mother is قومي سوري اجتماعي.
Oh wow!
Look at the combination.
And are they still in those camps?
No.
Are they divorced? No, they're still together. Good. Okay.
So yeah, I'm the fruit of.
Yeah, well, this explains a lot, actually. Good days and bad days.
Let's not go there.
No, but so your role has. I'm guessing your role has been consistent. You're also young, so the role makes sense. And for you, Minteshreen today is still the same passion that it was on the streets, or is it something else in terms of politics? Because the reason I'm asking in a bit sort of a roundabout way is I don't think of Minteshreen as a protest movement anymore, although I did.
Yeah.
I only thought of it as a protest movement, and now I think of it completely in politics.
Yeah.
So is that how you see the word also, or do you still have this link to really the early days of the protest?
It grew bigger for me. I've witnessed Minteshreen on the ground from when it started and how we actually moved into being an actual political party. I've worked on the bylaws of the parties and a small part of the political paper. So I've experienced literally what does it mean to go from the ground into an actual organized political work, and I grew politically. I'm not the same person I was before, and Minteshreen is a big part of me, and it's part of what I am today, and how it I don't think it shaped actually, or they shaped me as when it comes to a political orientation, yet I was able to experience how to shape politics and how to define politics and what do I want actually from politics, and I've been more aware that I'm very passionate regarding anything that is concerning the youth, the education, and mental health. And I come from a mental health background. I have a clinical psychology master's.
See, for a reason, I thought you were the internal psychologist.
Some people mistake me like that.
I
do
mistake her as the internal psychologist.
Well, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Okay,
but it's fine.
So I'm glad you're saying it this way. Oh, go ahead,
I just want to mention something that because of this, just to wrap up everything, I'm now applying to, hopefully, if they don't continue with the dollarization issue, to AUB to pursue a public policy master's. So this is also something that is helping me. I want to dive more into this. I want to make change, and I am being able to kind of picture what I can do with this group.
I don't want to say anything bad about AUB. I'm an AUB graduate. The tours that I used to give actually started at AUB. The reason I call this podcast the Beirut Banyan, it's the banyan trees of AUB, the trees of knowledge. So I will never say anything bad, but I'm going to say one thing. Remember this when you're done. Everything you've done the last 2.5 years is far more important than a master's degree. And I promise you, your path in politics and the public policy masters, I don't think they will match up that much. But
we'll see.
I think maybe both work together somehow. I will go from you to Ghiya, and I'll let you, of course, talk on your behalf. But I will say one thing: I like that the word is able to evolve, and your recent post about vampires resonated with me because I think it was maybe an hour or two after I tried writing something like that. Just the word vampire didn't come to mind. And I think a lot of people are putting pressure on Minteshreen because it's not a protest movement anymore. It's a political movement. It's a political party in the making. And it's not on the street. It's heading to something else. So I think that the pressure and the attacks come with the territory. But before we get into that, your own role, your title, I think once somebody referred to as an external relations, but I'm like, can't be that. That sounds a little too vague. And if the word also resonates with the way Jana was talking.
Okay, so basically, I didn't join Minteshreen as the chair of the external relations.
Oh, okay.
I joined Minteshreen as someone who's curious to see how they can contribute to bettering, if I am to be genuine, to enhancing and bettering the country in a way that my potential can match. And I remember Minteshreen, I joined in May. In April, early 2021.
Okay.
So after just when Minteshreen was, shifting into a political party and sort of just outreaching to the environment around, and I was referred to Minteshreen, and I attended their first outreach presentation of the political paper and the political.
Is this before they tried to actually become a political party?
No,
it's quite a bit after.
Yes,
okay.
We actually presented our paper and started our recruitment out of word of mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
Until the website was up.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay. And is that also before the memorandum with Kitle, or is it?
It's around the same time, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
The reason I'm curious about this is because that's when my recognition of Minteshreen also grew.
Yeah.
It went from being individuals on the podcast with names that I already knew, like Mia Atwe or Gino Raiti or Samir Makarim, who's a friend, and there's others as well. And then suddenly I saw it on CNN, where I saw the name being exposed on media.
Yeah.
So I guess it worked that you were able to pull extra people. Yeah.
Definitely. It was around this time where I started, knowing that there's something called Minteshreen. I had a lot of friends within Minteshreen. I was, just following them on social media. I knew that they were a street movement. But when they outreached to me and I attended this presentation, I remember it was for 3 or 2.5 hours or 3 hours. They were presenting all the details of the political party, and the first question.
And then you were worried. You're like,
It was the first session.
Actually, it was good because the first question I had, I remember I raised my hand on Zoom. I was like, okay, what's the next step? What can I do? How can I join? and I was surprising for me because I had never been part of any political movement, of any political party. I was I was always skeptical about the emerging political movements after October 17 revolution.
Yeah.
So I saw that the party and its visions and its values sort of speak to my visions and values and how I envision my country to be. So that's why I joined and I directly helped the People's Committee. We were talking to members and always in contact with members and organizing meetings.
She went from being an attendee to to the one who presents actually in the political way.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's like I grew within Minteshreen as Minteshreen was growing.
Right.
So
I think everyone grew.
Yeah.
It's quite remarkable. I've been maybe a little too kind to Minteshreen, but I think it's an honest opinion. It's the only group that resonates with me in the long run. And I also saw something remarkable. You're youth-driven, and the average age, I think, is probably somewhere in the 20s. But I'm twice that. I'm 40. And I feel inspired by this. Somehow it's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
It's reform and looking at society as it is, and a lot of people that have some maturity built in. Now, I'm going to go down a road that maybe is a bit sensitive, but I think it's a strategic move that is smart not to field a candidate from Minteshreen right now.
Yeah.
Do you share that opinion? And can you tell me as much as you can what it's like to do that? Because I know that Mia Atwe briefly and then went back.
Yeah.
She, I think, flirted with the idea and then withdrew. But I think that's a smart move. So can you guys, whatever you can from these internal meetings, and how you were able to figure it out so quickly. Because it's a sharp move. And I'm not a member of Minteshreen, but I think it's the wisest move that was done.
Yeah.
So anything you can say to that? Maybe Jana, if you could. Yeah.
And personally, this was okay. I know it was an irrational decision, but for me, Mia is like, she represents everything for me that a good and the perfect candidate should have. She's a very hard worker. She has the background. She did what she did. She's someone who takes the initiative to make issues, to solve issues, and to find a solution. And she worked in the public aspect of things, even though people think NGOs are not, maybe, or Embrace is not a public. But she worked closely with the Ministry of Health.
Health, yeah.
So she had a program. She had a program regarding education and mental health and everything. So and personally, I say, okay, I'm frustrated why she resigned, but it was definitely one of the smartest, if you want to say it, or most strategic one.
Why would you say? I think I say it. I'm putting pressure on you, but why do you think it's a smart strategic move?
Ghiya,
That's very smart. You just throw it over. Okay.
That's very smart and strategic of you.
That was a good job.
Yeah.
Just well done. Yeah. So Ghiya, why is it a strategic move?
I mean, no, I totally agree with Jana on everything that Mia represents.
You want to throw it to me now?
No, I won't throw it. I won't throw it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I totally agree with her, and I think everyone does. But I do feel like at the moment, because we decided as a political party, whether it is taking part of the lobbying effort that eventually produced the G6 that produced the call for a unified campaign that was on March 12th. This effort and us playing a role in this effort has a rationale behind it, and it's us wanting to go on with the battle of the elections, whether it's through Mia being a candidate or having any other candidate or not. But why do I think it's smart and strategic? Because as you said, we relatively moved into being a political party and we showed in a lot of areas political maturity. But I feel like, as with the whole dynamics of what's going on and with the role that the groups are playing and how the talks are being held, that the manifestation of our political maturity was through that smart decision, because as the time moves on, maybe it's not our time right now. Maybe we can leverage on other things.
Absolutely.
It aligns with.
Oh, now you want to share your feelings? I say, okay, please, Jana.
It aligns actually with our political vision to actually defining politics and not only having a seat in the parliament.
But I think it's such a
Malik agrees.
Oh, he's still here. Okay. You have 4 days. So I think it's a great move, because for me it's not about trying to get power for the sake of power.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I think being in parliament just to have a name in there doesn't mean much. But taking the long journey, which could even start with something like municipal elections next year,
Totally.
that could be the beginning of the road rather than trying to jump at the end. So I really think it was the best decision you guys made. Whether this was a unified decision or not, I don't know what Mia's feelings are, but I think it's the wisest move.
She agrees. She definitely approves of that.
Okay, good.
I mean, and I said this today actually, and I was thinking about it and I tweeted about it. I said politics is about the greater good. And when politics is not being shown as as such,
there's a problem.
There's a big problem.
I think all of us were tweeting things like that in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, for a reason.
For a reason. Nice segue. So why don't we jump into the reason now? Before we go, because I will give you a lot of time to talk about Minteshreen in itself. But the last 24 hours for me have been quite a journey. It seems like everyone is being attacked all the time. And it seems like it's amplified. Do you think that this is just trying to get some leverage with the lists that are being formed, or do you think this is a burning of bridges? That there's a real division now on October 17, and it's too late to bring the sides together?
It's a bit of both.
It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
I'll let you start then, Jana. Don't throw it to her yet. Later.
It's a bit of both. I think there is not an actual division, yet there's different point of views of how to actually practice politics and what approach to use with politics. So that's one thing. But I cannot not see also the frustration that people have. And some of them are also attacking each other out of, for example, many, I know outside, they are not in any political parties, but from the current, or political movements from the current, which are post October 17, but they are mostly active on politically. Their point is that they wanted to see a program, they wanted to see, they expected something different from the alternatives.
Right.
So they had a lot of high expectations, and that is also a pressure on the alternative political parties to serve that expectations.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they are new to politics, most of them. Yes, مثلا there's Memphis that it's an old political party, or مثلا كتلة. بس إنه each and everyone has their own identity at the end of the day as a party or as etc. The point is إنه I don't know how to say it. إنه we're gonna be different. I don't see it as a problem personally because
different meaning is that towards the lists, or is that post-elections different? Like different?
No, different as what I meant by saying different within the divisions. I don't think they are divided, yet they are different within their identity and within their political orientation or how they want to practice politics or etc. Not that I'm with actually, talking with etc. But the point is, at the end of the day, we're gonna have to build the country together, and this should be also something that's gonna always resonate in our heads.
Right.
Because when we get to the parliament, I don't know, Kataeb will get their MPs, Namat will get elected, and we're not gonna fool the numbers. We know they're gonna get elected.
This is why I like talking to Minteshreen members. They see things that are not imagined; they're real.
This is how it is. See, I'm talking about the expectations.
Yeah.
I'm putting it myself.
No, but I like the way you frame it. It's both. It's both. Ghiya, do you think we're all losing sleep? It's the first episode I've done where it's like, literally. Maybe at the end of the table. Pre-election. Yeah.
Breakdown.
Do you see it that way? The way Jana laid it out, and that it's trying to signal that we're important, but also that maybe it's too late.
I mean, I don't think it's too late. I feel like if I were to zoom out a little bit, and see things objectively from an eagle, lens. This is normal. First, it's pre-elections. Tensions are already on a high. Second, in all electoral contexts, if we were to put it, even with the Sulta, the most experienced political parties, we see changes last minute, and we see internal fights, and we see internal tensions on the rise. So if we see that in experienced, comprehensive Sulta parties that have been there for 30 years, they know the game, they put the rules of the game. Of course, we're going to see this in political parties that are emerging and have relatively less experience in that. So as much as it's frustrating, yes, there are divisions, there are differences, but what we're trying to say is that technically and really realistically, a lot have been passed already from where we were 4 months ago.
Where we are today.
And where we are today. 4 months ago, a unified campaign or coalition was not even in sight in the talks.
So 4 months ago was worse than today? Really?
Relatively speaking, the negotiations and the talks have progressed a lot.
That's interesting.
And whenever you're getting closer, I don't know, but I think people will get more public in order to leverage more to specific.
And of course, there's leveraging to it. This is politics at the end of the day. But I don't think it's too late. I think it's only normal. Optimistic about the next few days, pragmatically speaking, I don't know. But what I can say is that last minute changes are always an option, and what I can say is given all the work that's been done and all the efforts and all the challenges that were there in the coalition building process, we've come a long way.
Absolutely. Actually, that's well said. My own experience, and I like the way you shared this, Jana, that privately, it's a very different story, the internal deliberations. From my side, it seems like there's a crisis that just gets worse and worse and worse, but it's better to know from the inside that no, there's actually dialogue still.
Yes.
But within that dialogue now, it seems like there's at least... there's one issue that will never be agreed upon, and that's the role of a regime party within October 17. And that Kataeb story, for you guys at least, within Minteshreen, is it over, that you accept this party as a party that you can work with long term, or is it still being discussed even within Minteshreen? Because I'm wondering really, and this is a more hypothetical, had Kataeb not existed, let's say there's no party called Kataeb, let's say shut down, it went with Saad Hariri to Abu Dhabi, right? So Sami and Saad are weightlifting in a gym, and there's the Beit al-Kataeb is closed, right? That's what it's gone. I still think the divide would be there. Irrespective of Kataeb, I think there is a natural divide. And it may be ideological to a degree.
Yeah, definitely.
So how does Minteshreen work within that?
Yeah.
Do you see it as, no, we've made up our mind, we can work alongside Kataeb when necessary, and we don't have to work with them all the time either? I'm trying to understand...
Yeah,
because there's flexibility within Minteshreen that doesn't exist necessarily on the other side of October 17.
Totally. I mean, just realistically saying, Minteshreen has not been a part of any coalition that Kataeb has been a part of. Okay? So we have that set on the table. However, whether it's Kataeb or any other traditional reformist party that's out there, okay, where do the talks or the openness to the talks play a role? It's because, relatively, if we have, we've said that we've not been in alliance with the Kataeb, that's not there. However, can we coordinate along outside these lines, at least with the other political parties, emerging political parties? So what was the rationale of the G6? Not only regarding Kataeb, but in general. The rationale was to come and say, yes, we're different. Yes, we have different ideological point of views. Yes, we're divided on Kataeb, on Communist Party, on Osama Saad. We're also divided on the economic vision. We're divided on all of these things.
That's within the six.
Yes. Within the six and within the two camps. So we're talking April 13 and the Lebanese opposition front.
Right.
So these six groups, 3 from each camp, they came and they said, yes, we have all of these beautiful divisions, but we have a common goal, a common short-term goal. We have a lot of commonalities that we can focus on just for the time being, because if we were to fight this battle, we have to fight it together. And we'll fight about our economic visions, we'll fight about who we will ally with later.
That later, though, if you can jump ahead a bit and it's important, the way you describe it is so helpful. The two, April 13, and the way you're drawing it out makes sense, and that none of these groups necessarily get along by default, but they work together to a bigger goal. And even within that, I like the way you're saying it. Economics, you can disagree, and even Kataeb, you disagree, but you still work together to try to change everything. And I like the way you're doing it. But if no one gets into parliament, if 0 names emerge, not the Kataeb crowd, they're going in, and you said it, Jana. Namet Frem,
go in.
I mean, Michel Amawad, almost certainly, and who else do we have? I mean, the independents that are being accepted to a degree. If no one goes into parliament, is that still a victory for you? And in terms of Minteshreen, that you changed the game, maybe you applied pressure.
Okay, so I'm gonna start. Someone will get into the parliament. There's people that will get into the parliament. I'm positive over that. Because
on October 17.
October 17. It's not a loss.
Not Paula Yaobian, not the ones that have been in before.
No. People, new faces will be in.
Okay.
Because what happened, it's not only what happened of October, the world doesn't only revolve around just the protests and October 17 crowd. The world revolves around what is happening in the country. And the people of the country are suffering, and they are living under so much pressure. And yes, I'm gonna say it in Arabic. وعم نراهن على الصوت الاعتراضي تبع الناس على السلطة. It's very complicated for me to express it in English. But that itself shows that yes, people will get in, and yes, we do have the divisions and etc. Everything that was laid by Ghiya amazingly. But I'm gonna speak on our behalf, on my behalf, and Minteshreen. why we started Minteshreen was always for the long-term plan, was to redefine politics, to redefine the political culture, to re-involve the youth within politics, because I don't want anymore to say Hizb and people to لا, you can't. أصلا I say the personal is political. And
but does Minteshreen, in your mind, does it stay the way it is post-elections if no one gets in?
Yeah.
So the journey is still there, with or without?
The journey was never laid based on a short-term plan.
Right.
Definitely.
It was laid for a long-term plan. And when I say that, I'm not speaking very in a theoretical way. What you can go check our program. And there's a lot of things we want to achieve, and we went into. I personally participated in creating in Minteshreen, and I am in Minteshreen because I want to achieve these stuff. And because we deserve to live here.
I mean, I totally agree, and I feel like we did manage our expectations regarding elections, even before. 6 months ago, we were still not sure they were going to happen. We still were working, and we still were planning a year and 2 years ahead, and so we've managed our expectations in such a way that we're going to go through this battle regardless of the results. Let's role play. Let's do the scenario where no one gets into the parliament.
I think that's going to happen. That's why I appreciate anyone who says the opposite. But what I really think, no one's getting in. But to me, it's not a defeat. Anyway, I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's definitely not. It's definitely.
Pause.
Definitely not. The awareness that was created, now the people speak politics. It was absurd in France.
Sorry, I interrupted. You were saying something important there.
And with Minteshreen in specific, I feel like because we've gained relatively a lot of experience over the past 1 year, and specifically over the past 5 months when it comes to really how politics is all about and how to move into institutionalized politics, and that's why we became a party. Because we've gained that personal leverage on a party level, we never based, just as Jana laid it out, we never based anything on the short term. That's why we said we'll take on this battle, regardless of the results. Let's say no one gets into parliament. Now we have even, better chances to organize ourselves, to understand what the dynamic in Lebanon is, and to work on our midterm and long-term goals, because our vision, it's bigger. And it's bigger than any elections, especially such a gerrymandered electoral law that we, on our political program, we seek to change.
I mean, it's the most complicated. I tried looking at it in an Excel sheet. I'm like, why would you even? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And but then that goes back to something else. So I appreciate this way of looking at the long term. I think it's actually the right thing to do. Don't look at parliament as the goal. And Minteshreen stands out in that sense. The goal of something which I like to discuss regularly on the podcast, but I discuss it with somebody who's probably been through more, and the guests tend to be more dinosaurish like me, and they tend to be maybe sometimes even outdated with their views. There's something I don't agree with, and I want you guys to explain to me why I'm wrong.
Okay.
All right, good. Let's go here. There's a focus on secularism that comes naturally to the October 17 protester. And it seems to resonate in that the word is used. A civil state is always, it's in every slogan. The sectarianism is the problem. We need to overcome sectarianism. The usual language that you see actually by almost everyone that was on the street on October 17. So who am I to say that that's wrong? It could be right, but I think it's wrong. And I'll explain. I don't think it helped October 17 to go down that road. And there's something here about society which I think Minteshreen does better than other groups. It's that it doesn't work against society. It reaches out to the way things are.
Definitely.
And the flexibility, the way you described it, you don't have to open the window to Kataeb, but you can drive on the same road. You don't have to throw your number to their window, right? So you can work in parallel. That's actually working within the way society functions in Lebanon. But the disdain for sectarianism, why does that come so naturally? And if you do believe that this is a problem in terms of reform, why is it a problem?
Who do you want to start with?
Yeah.
This doesn't mean that I'm saying I'm a sectarian person, or even that I think secularism is bad.
Yeah.
It's more that if the goal is to try to work within society, I think Lebanon is and always will be a sectarian society.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I hear you.
That's a good tactic. I hear you.
Hey, she's learning well.
Yeah, oh, good hire.
Yeah, I mean, I really do, but like, I feel like let's dig deeper. Let's dig deeper into what sectarianism even is in Lebanon. You know, I'm not gonna go into like all the history. I'm not gonna turn this interview into a history lesson, but Lebanon, as much as we do think that sectarian identities are very rigid and are very strong and are very just entrenched in us as a society, I believe that it is not even close to being rigid. It's an imagined identity that's so easy to break, and so easy to get out of. I'm not saying this in a delusional way that we're not all la. But the malleability of sectarianism as an identity was proven with the October 17 revolution. Because and so this sort of resonates also on why all the emerging political movements after October 17 seem to agree on why we need a civil state and why we are anti-sectarian in identity. Because for 180 years, Lebanon has adopted a consociational democracy that's entrenched in a confessional system based on sects.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's not because our political culture was sectarian that we eventually got a political system that's sectarian. It's because that political system was imposed and was institutionalized for all these years that the political culture ended up being sectarian in general. And October 17, we didn't go down the streets because we were, we felt threatened as Shias or Sunnis or Maronites. No, we sort of, we manifested a common identity, which is a non-sectarian identity.
You've laid out the argument that for me it sounds so logical, yet it doesn't resonate with me. And I think it's an issue with my prejudice, maybe. I think none of this is imposed. I think Lebanon is naturally built to accommodate communities. And I don't think it can be another country without it not being Lebanon.
Yeah.
Now, I live in Maram Khayr. Okay? I'm in a modest home in Maram Khayr. Originally from Tripoli.
Yeah.
But my relationship to Tripoli is distant. Okay? It says it on my Hawi. It says my sect on my Ikhraj Eid. Myself and my sect have nothing in common. So I'm not... I can't find the Sunni in me.
Yeah.
Even when I look for it.
Yeah.
It doesn't show up.
Yeah.
And I also think that the Sunni community is feeling punished today. I don't feel punished. But I think there's a problem in maybe not reading the inertia that is Lebanon. And I'll go back in time. We're kind of dating ourselves because I know now your ages. In the 1990s, the Christians felt the same way. They felt betrayed, or they felt like they weren't part of the fabric anymore. That to me is more destructive than any... That has much more bigger consequences than sectarianism is a problem.
Yeah.
So this is 2022. And I'll go back even further. Lebanon's independence, I don't think, is a forced situation. I really think Lebanon is exactly the way it was supposed to be. But a problem that doesn't let our sectarianism work better is what keeps us paralyzed. That's the boogeyman that Minteshreen is willing to talk about.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's the issue that you were very eloquent in addressing in your speech, which is why it hit me hard. But that, to me, is the reason why sectarianism is ugly.
Definitely.
Okay, so is there how? I mean, let me throw it at a different way. Saad Hariri picks up and leaves. Nobody in Sabotage Tashrin was chanting for him to stay. He's the collateral damage. He resigns, and he tries for a year to do something. He can't. He fails. He leaves. He boycotts. Whether he's a failure or not is secondary. Now you have a void within Lebanon. So why does the civil state secularism stuff still work, at least in terms of dialogue, when that is a bigger problem?
Yeah. Why is it? Because it
and thank you for letting me ask you these big questions, because I don't get the chance to ask someone in Minteshreen, a younger crowd, this complicated question. So thank you for letting me even open up about this.
It's okay. It's a safe platform.
Yes, well, I hope so, yeah.
Okay, so...
أنت واحد مني.
That would be ملك مش أنا.
خليك برا. ما في list.
مش
Okay, so I'm gonna speak from a social perspective.
Sure.
Because that's what I do. When everything that happened, it رسخت فكرة إنه the idea of that an individual is perceived as Muslim, Sunni, Masihi, Drzi, etc. As when I am speaking about this, I'm speaking about the civil war. I witnessed it at home. My parents, Kataeb, I know that. I have even the part of my family from my grandfather and my grandfather used to fight against his sister, which عجبها.
Oh wow!
It's
okay.
that.
Yeah.
I've.
Wow, that's intense.
That's no wonder you're a psychology person.
Yeah.
So I know now that I'm gonna give a small example. Whenever you're gonna change a medication, the doctor tells you خفف الدواء gradually. They don't tell you to stop it from your body because it's gonna cause a shock.
Yeah.
It will definitely cause a shock. The fact that there's no anymore Hariri for the population that is now votes for them. And
there's
I would I would like to perceive them.
So you're willing to admit that?
Definitely.
Okay.
Because
you don't ignore it and say no. What's that group? Beirut Kataeb could simply take over.
لا أبدا.
No one
tell
can
you
take
why.
over anyone.
Yeah.
They're gonna create a new safe space where they're gonna introduce to the people, and they need to, we all need to be close to the people. We came from the people. We came from the streets. They're gonna introduce to them, for example, when let's go back to هيك شيء ملموس. There's no more any more medication, and the people were very, very anxious to actually take the alternative medication. Why? Because it's something new, it's something they don't know about. It's something they are not used to. It's definitely a void. I have my friends that are currently very anxious, and they are angry. They are angry because they are not feeling that they are being represented. But they used to always perceive the representation as me. As for example, أنا Sunni, I need Hariri to be my representative. When they are starting to perceive themselves that me, as X, I am picking Mustaqbal as my representative. They are looking into what Mustaqbal are offering. That's when things shift and it becomes different. The difference between sectarianism and Ghiya can talk more in details about it, but how I do actually perceive it is that when you do implement a civil state or a secular state, you're telling the people that okay, this is a very new طرح. But 2 years ago they used to confuse secularism with atheism. There's a lot of progress.
No, but you know
for now there's a lot of progress.
It's fine.
I'll interject one more point, then I'll let you. It's something simple like the Civil War ended 33 years ago. And something within the Ta'if agreement was meant to heal sectarian wounds. And that's something very basic. It's a Senate where you put the sectarian anxiety and you let it function accordingly. And parliament becomes merit-based.
But they didn't, because they didn't do it like that.
But can I add, this is just out of, I always look for it and I don't find it. Why is that not part of the protest language? In other words, we need to implement Ta'if. And as opposed to running away from it, saying Ta'if is why we failed. Lebanon is born wrong.
That's really interesting. Thank you for bringing this up, because this is
now
a debate.
Now I get bitch slapped.
This is the debate that's been just going on. And let me tell you where the fine line is. I can speak for Minteshreen, and I think other emerging political movements calling for a civil state and secularism can agree. We never say it's a solution to a problem. So it's not going to solve sectarianism, and it's not going to let the Sunnis feel at ease.
Right.
And it's not going to let the Shias change their ideological preferences. It's not going to do that, secularism, because we cannot reach secularism in a pinch of fingers or two. This is a vision that bases our calls for reforms. However, because Lebanon is a deeply divided society, and there's a theory on deeply divided societies that says you cannot really apply a fully democratic system in deeply divided societies. Arnold Liphart has already came up with this theory, and this is why you create consociation of democracies, and if not consociation of democracies, you create power sharing agreements. This is how you can mitigate through a sectarian or ethno-sectarian variations and at least get to a functional system. In Lebanon, if we were to look at power sharing, the Ta'if مش بس implement Ta'if. Ta'if, it was a reformist power sharing agreement that's supposed to be temporary. It shouldn't be a 33...
It's transitory towards a civil state as an end goal.
They never actually did this transition.
It has not been applied. And why? It's interesting because no one really says apply Ta'if. But for example, in our political program, we do tackle Article 95 of cancelling political sectarianism in general, which opens the door to that question. There's a need to implement Ta'if the way it is. We're not calling for secularism because we believe it's the ultimate solution, because it sort of zooms us out of focus. If this is our final and initial call, and this is what we call for always. No, if that's not the case, that's why we focus on other dimensions. We are a sectarian political system. We're not going to grow out of this sectarian political system if we change the dynamic of the parliament in the next 6 to 10 years. That's not going to happen. It's a very long-term process. But we have several pillars that we need to work on in order to mitigate through sectarianism, fight traditional sectarian political parties in a whole different and new narrative, because the narrative of emerging political movements, it's been there even before. We've seen a lot of anti-sectarian political movements even before the outbreak of civil war. But why is it different now? Because after October 17 revolution, and how I personally like to see it, is it paved the way for a change in the political behavior of the political field in Lebanon.
I agree, and I think it actually did something more dramatic, and so maybe it's easier to see this later. It made the older parties wake up now, and the reason
they shifted with the narrative. Some people now come and say دولة مدنية,
or even they polarized even more, like Hezbollah and Janub. When in the past 30 years in Nabatea people march calling against the Lebanese Shia duo in Nabatea, the most polarized city in Lebanon in terms of Shias.
So I'm going to throw an example.
This is crazy.
Because it's almost like an intellectual exercise, because I'd like to imagine what it's like to come up with a website that has very in-depth. I'm actually going to embed the website, because you guys have done a lot of work in every single sector of Lebanese society, especially economics, but I'll make sure the website is included. But let's do a sort of a dance here. I don't think anyone in Nabati was trying to get rid of Harakat Amal or Hezbollah. I think they were trying to reform these parties.
But
Interesting, but why?
Can I say one? Okay, so remember Trablus 3-4 weeks into the protests, or maybe less? Remember the images of people dancing on the streets and that very insane, euphoric moment? I don't think any of them were trying to get rid of Tayyar Mustaqbal or whatever, any other party that has a footprint there. I think they wanted these parties to behave better. And I'll bring it home now. I'll let you, one thing. I don't think anyone in Tayyar Watan al-Hur who's not voting this round is voting for civil society groups. Or the opponents, which are obvious, Uwait, or even if you want to say Kataeb, I don't think they're going to just jump ship. They're going home.
Why do you think so?
Okay, so this is my grand problem, and every time I open up this door, because it's trying to see gravity, history, and a real shift in mood and how it all comes together. I think Lebanese are sectarian, even when they say they're not sectarian. I think all of us can be secular too.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't make sense to discount that this grouping of communities is way beyond our control, and it's natural. And I can't imagine any other explanation why Tayyar Watan al-Hur, which was cursed day in and day out for months, where the one man in particular is insulted daily, they're going to lose maybe 10-15%. That to me is not a big defeat. That's you can deal with that.
Yeah.
So why is the sectarian establishment doing as well? Jana. No, go ahead.
When you said for them to reform their parties, but that's what we want. If they are not agreeing with how their parties should be or they should function, then they are aware of the corrupted practice of politics.
Which is a breakthrough.
That's something very important. And and when it comes to you saying you're forgetting about a very big amount of new people that are newly being introduced to politics, which are the youth.
Yeah, that's true.
And the development of how things went and how open the world is all on itself, on everywhere around the globe. This theory is adopted by many of the youth, and I guess I can speak of myself and my friends. Because they just want to be seen as individuals, as humans. They want to be seen outside of this.
Right.
The ideology of the old political parties will always remain there. But the growth is linear, and it's not always like that.
Permit me to put myself in the youth.
Yeah.
Thank you. The cosmopolitan crowd that we identify with, that we all know, we're all friends, we're not reflective of Lebanon. And October 17, 2.5 years ago, is less appealing today than everyone.
Yes.
That's appealing to everyone, youth or the dinosaurs. So the brand has
it lost its momentum.
It's not about the brand. It's about the idea of why we weren't there and what we want to change and why we are doing this.
Yeah.
It's about an ideology that was created from October 17 and that is being actually becoming alive in each and every one of us.
And not to forget, you know why it doesn't resonate anymore? Not to forget we're in amidst of a deliberate depression.
That's true.
It's been 3 years. It took us 1 year to at least try to resume normal life after August 4th.
You're right.
The economic depression. I mean, everything is slower than it would be in normal situations. And I do believe that you're being very realistic, and we agree on that. Numerically speaking, the Sultana, it's still strong.
Yeah.
They have a clientelistic network that is not 30 years old. I want to say 60 and 70 years
Absolutely.
old. And this, it's not going to be broken by October 17 revolution. They're still going to be strong. and they're still going to be there, and that's why the people didn't want to oust them. They didn't expect them to be ousted, because hey, they're not going to be ousted into the sea just because we went down on the street on October 17. But
that's what makes you guys different than the fringe on one section of October 17. What you just said is the sentence that is splitting up the camp. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, just the point I was trying to make is that just the fact that people called for reforming that party, and I would speak in Jnoub, for example. Why do people in Jnoub, why is their narrative, we don't want to oust these political parties, but we are disappointed in them, and we believe that they are corrupt, because a lot of them fought along their lines for many years, and there's a passionate a cause that united them at one point, and the fact that this passionate cause is not, what's keeping them from saying that these parties are corrupt. This is the breakthrough.
Yeah. And it's also important. You guys have said it in different ways, and it's important to touch on it. This is a youth-driven movement.
Definitely.
And I will admit that sometimes you do feel out of step a bit, that there is a new, there's an appeal to change things. And I think it's going to happen over time. And I don't think Lebanese should be worried about change either, even if it goes completely towards a civil state or whatever that state is. The youth will determine the future of this country. But of all the youth-driven groups, I'll say it again, Minteshreen stands out. So I'm going to ask you guys complicated questions here.
It's fun.
You're able to talk about Hezbollah.
Yeah,
definitely.
أكيد.
You're able to talk about it. And I know that it's not like the three of us here can change the regional dynamics that impact Lebanon, but you're able to talk about it. Even when you don't have answers necessarily, you can still address the problem. So how does a youth-driven party group figure it out very fast?
Okay, I think you've said it once. Hezbollah is not the elephant in the room. It is the room. I insist on it.
Oh shit.
I insist on it being the room. We
should have treats for when somebody does something.
Ya Allah.
Would you like Sharahuri or Riyad Salah?
Come on, these are Sharahuri and Riyad Salah.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, yes they are.
I love them.
You're not going to take the pen. No, but I appreciate. You know what? No, these are mine. I'm going to keep them. You get nothing except a fist bump. I'm glad yeah. Okay.
Okay, so it is the elephant in the room. We may not be able to actually now come and go and face them where we aim to go and face them, and where we want to actually fight and to go into this fight. But we are facing them daily. We're expressing our opposition to this. I don't know what should I call it. بدي يطلع كلمة
a transnational army.
ميليشيا.
That was perfect. Give me Bishop. Transnational army. Is that Bishop? I don't know. That sounds very academic, but yes.
Sorry, but academic
nice,
English speaking. She's ignorant. Kind of me.
But we face them personally, when it comes to where we can actually. For example, the student elections. For example, the student bodies.
Yeah.
For the campaigns they do with I'm going to speak on my behalf in that field. In the Lebanese university ما فيه يكون مجمع الحدث هو مقر لحزب الله وحركة أمل. They are targeting these people specifically because they know that's how they want to affect, and they are targeting them in a clientelistic way that emphasizes on the point that Ghiya talked about, which is the clientelistic institutionalized sectarianism.
But you're able to talk about their non-Lebanese part of the story easily. So you're able to say transnational army. You're not afraid to go down that road.
No.
And you're able to even address things like we want Hezbollah to reform too. It's not like you want to exclude what could be 20% of the population. You can't do that. Yeah, so you figured it out fast. How did you guys reach that point?
We
sat together and we argued about
it. We talked about the political paper. Actually, it took us 9 months to actually draft it, and we read it and we changed it, and we still think it needs we need to constantly change it and add to it. This is not something it comes out easily, but it's something that we had in common. We know what's the problem. It's not anymore. We don't have to fool anyone about this.
Definitely.
Anymore.
And among these issues that we sat and talked about was sovereignty, was the role of the state, was Hezbollah, was the Syrian and Lebanese relationships, Israeli conflict. These were the issues we talked about, and we called them divisive issues. Divisive issues. Yeah. But when we talked about them,
we were very united.
They weren't very divisive.
Yeah.
We all agree that Hezbollah and its arms and what it represents in Lebanon is among the priority of tackling it is among the priority of our political program. مش إنه لا وبعدين later we talk about this now. It's a priority. And everything we do, whether it's directly related to targeting them or what they represent or their narrative that a lot of other political parties share as well, they're a big part of this sectarian structure, and they're a big part of the sulta that we are fighting. Okay? So with everything that we do and target by opposing that sulta, ultimately opposes them.
Yeah.
So,
and it opposes them in many ways. It doesn't have to be only by just opposing them within the parliament or within the wizaret, or I don't know. You can oppose them daily, literally.
But do you think? I know it's unfair to put this huge question on one group within October 17. But do you think if this whole ambition fails, long term, would the burden go on that group and its capabilities?
Ambition of what?
Of reform. In other words, would you, if you were trying to examine the failure of this experiment called October 17, would you put the burden on sectarian structure, or would it be more on issues that Lebanese cannot even touch? Because I appreciate all of us can talk about Hezbollah. Minteshreen has a unique advantage in being head-on about it, but our capabilities are limited.
Definitely.
Yeah. So would you be able to comfortably say that this problem, in a way, prevented long-term reform? Or would you still look at, in a way, the system, the state, sectarianism as the ultimate burden?
I would say
they reinforce each other.
Yeah, I would say they strengthen. Definitely, that's what I wanted to say. They strengthen each other even more. But while we say this, we have to remember that Hezbollah is not the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
It's the room. At a time, I love هيدا التعبير. It's amazing. But
do you tell people it's yours?
No,
I would respect you more if you're like, do you know what I thought of yesterday? And then I'm like, she heard about it too. I'm teasing you.
So at a time where reform or the intensity of reform, or how fast it is or how slow it is, at a time where reform was just around the corner, I would say Hezbollah also plays a role in not allowing it to be around the corner. Not all the time, but I'm talking if I were to historically look at things. So eventually, Hezbollah is a state within a state.
Hassan Diab government. All the reasons that lead to ammonium nitrate in Lebanon. Tar bitar. The difficulties of getting anything to function today. It would be hard for me to remove Hezbollah from all of that. And then I think of this poor little state with a dysfunctional system that everyone hates as not even being given that chance to work.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I don't know. This reinforcing thing, everyone I know says it all the time, that they live together, and that mafia militia stuff, and everyone is sort of like, they feed off of each other. I don't think any of that is true. I think one prevents one from functioning. The thing that doesn't function right is old and outdated and needs to be reformed. And I see it as sort of like this long-term story that we like to rush in into.
We definitely like to rush in
Yeah.
because we're impatient. We want to change things.
Impatience, and then Lebanon is not only a few years old. Lebanon is
Exactly.
centuries of trying.
Exactly.
Yeah, so again, I'm being unfair, but I think the added value is that Minteshreen could talk about something that many groups were running away from and talked about it principally. But I really think that this will be the reason why this whole experiment doesn't work if it eventually fails.
And I just want to highlight one thing is that we have a lot of priorities on our list, and we have a lot of things, we have our own contextualization of problems in general in Lebanon. And I feel like because eventually Minteshreen cannot our capabilities and they stem from talking about the issue. They also are entrenched in the fact that we're preparing for another مش era, but we're preparing for a new dynamic, a dynamic that's able to talk about this as a problem, but as well, despite this being a problem, does not stop its reformist ambitions and its reformist steps, because we have other things on the list, such as judiciary system reforms, such as banking system reforms, such as implementing an social liberal economic policies that are relatively new to Lebanon. So
but you said you can talk. Talking is a big part of the problem. We need to have these discussions. I need to go tell my father, Yalla Habibi, what happened was wrong. We need to have
your mom or
no, but what happened in the past was wrong. And for me, I know that my father seeing me involved in politics in that way, it would affect him in some certain way. But for me, talking to him and saying to him that you cannot anymore oppose Hezbollah because we're just from a specific sect and they are from a specific sect. No, you have reasons. There's actual reasons. They did that and they did that, and you actually are suffering from this. You cannot anymore oppose Uwait or Aouni or Mabarif, just because you are this or that. Talking makes the major difference.
That's true. Talking for the sake of talking is great. I like to find solutions. And the solutions are being prevented, I believe, by one party. Not one party, one problem. No. And it's a problem that the party is in, but it's not about Hezbollah as a political party. It's about a security problem that prevents the best of us from getting towards real reform. You mentioned Samir Asir. I'm glad you brought him up. Okay, Samir Asir should be with us. Actually, who am I to be talking? Samir Asir should have the podcast of the country or whatever. He should have a show. Actually, he should be on the street, not in a statue form, and he should be around. Many others, but the problem got rid of them. Why would October 17 be any different than everyone who's been trying against this problem?
It didn't get rid of them. I refuse to admit that it got rid of them. Just the fact that I'm here and speaking and being affected by such a great mind, it shows that it didn't get rid of them. Everywhere within the student bodies, the secular clubs, I think everyone has some of Samir Asir's ideas in their mind. This shows that no, it didn't get rid of them. These people specifically.
It got rid of their ability to enact reform. It didn't get rid of the passion for reform. And the passion, I think, grew. October 17, to me, is the buildup of everything that went wrong after March 2005. And October 17 still cannot get reform done.
It's 2 years old.
You're right. I agree. You're right. It's young. It's young, but it's half the population at any given point was protesting, and now the sectarian groups that we're talking about are winning. The most sectarian group in this country claims itself to be reformist, whatever. Go on the highway, they claim to have every slogan down.
Definitely.
There's no red ink left in the country. And they're going to be winning seats, not losing.
They're going to be winning. Yeah.
They're going to be winning. Yeah.
Definitely.
So to me, it's
Did
the opposite. It's the
Did you see how we say that they reinforce each other? Before Ghiya said it, sectarianism reinforce the presence of Hezbollah. Let's say the people with the red ink, they use the narrative. Okay, we need to be present here to protect you from Hezbollah and to protect your right as a sect from Hezbollah. But this reinforces that.
I'll say one more thing, then I'll let you. I keep
one.
interrupting you. I'm sorry. Sectarianism is ugly because of Hezbollah. Sectarianism is a supermarket without it. You can be whatever you want without that problem. It can be good or bad depending on what the issue is. It could be neutral. It could be actually just an academic description of a group of people. So I don't think it's inherently negative, and I don't think it's reinforcing Hezbollah. I'm sorry, I keep pushing back on this, but Ghiya, I interrupt you all the time.
It's fine. I mean, I want to go back to the point on October 17, how it failed to become a reformist move, or how you put it. I feel like we need to manage our expectations of the October 17.
Yeah.
The October 17 revolution, not a classist revolution, not a planned middle class revolution that eventually translates into a unitary movement. No, it was a burst of passion.
Yeah.
It was a burst of a common cry, and the verge of a triple crisis breakdown.
Yes.
It was the burst. It was the social انفجار.
Yeah.
إذا بدك, that took a positive turn, but also took a negative turn. And if we were to assess why it failed, or why it faced a lot of challenges to become an effective reformist movement, because going back to that structure of sectarianism, or I don't want to call it structure of sectarianism, I want to call it the scheme that the Sultan has been, adopting for many years now. Okay? Every time October 17 revolution came close to the benefits that this Sultan, whether Hezbollah or not, كلهم كestablishment, to their benefits, they would polarize on sectarianism, and they would bring people, armed people down the streets that would fight us. And eventually these armed people were Hezbollah, and a lot of them were Harakat Amal as well. So they used the good old guerrilla street tactics.
But it's interesting. I think we're saying the same thing in different ways. I don't think sectarianism drove Shia to punch non-Shia.
Or Shia to punch Shia.
Or Shia to punch Shia. And I don't think even that is part of it. I think none of that actually is there. I think Hezbollah is not a Lebanese only dimension and brings out the worst in a sectarian society. I think, because I'd like to think of the word as less.
It's not him alone. Let's be very realistic. Now in the parliament, Hezbollah with Harakat Amal, they have 23 elected candidates. With كتلة I said التيار الوطني العونية أنا بسميهم ما بتسميهم التيار الوطني الحر تيار الوطني العونية, they have 28 candidates. So together they have most أكتر عدد الناس يلي هن موجودين بالبرلمان. So they took أخذوا الشرعية. That's ultimate and that's where we go back to how politics is being practiced, and we go back to the road that for the people they are being I don't want to say manipulated, but they are being كيف قالت غيا قبل شوي انه كل ما بيشدوا العصب and then they go back to the fact انه Hezbollah is here. It's all about هيك
I'll circle one thing.
It's very correlated.
The president of this country spoke a completely different language 33 years ago. He spoke that language until 2005. It's a very different human being with a very different cause. The only reason he's president today is because of
what I just mentioned.
Hezbollah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Saad Hariri should not. This man is a complete accident in history. He's the son of someone who's eliminated, emerges because his older brother has a temper, and he still does. And he enters Parliament to. It's true. He has a short temper, or maybe it's softened. I don't know. He's trying. The Saad Hariri was the most. He was the preferred Hezbollah prime minister. Right.
They always rooted for him. Yeah.
They root for him. They really wanted him to come back.
Yeah.
When he was being slapped around in the desert, they begged for. I mean, Hezbollah prefers Saad Hariri, which means he's Hezbollah's preferred leader.
Yeah.
I'm getting there. Nabih Berri, in the late 1980s, made a name for himself by killing Hezbollah fighters.
Yeah.
They went to war.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. That is now Hezbollah's preferred speaker,
Yeah.
who's hitting 90 soon. So you have the president, prime minister, and the speaker of parliament. The most popular Christian figure is pro-Hezbollah. The most popular Sunni figure is boycotting because he's the most pro-Hezbollah he's their preferred prime minister. He boycotted himself. Nabih Berri could never even do anything else. Otherwise, he wouldn't be Speaker of Parliament.
Yeah.
That's not sectarianism to me.
That's power relations.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yeah. So that's where I get into this circle, which is sectarianism and that.
But based on what they built it. How they got their power.
Transnational army in Lebanon.
It's not only that. But
You don't think so? No, you don't. I mean, what?
It's not only that.
In the
Why
sense
do
that-
they feel that they need their weapon?
Well, the Syrians.
What's the
Syrians.
شو حجتهم؟
The Syrian
شو
army.
الناريتيف تبعتهم؟
The Syrian army turned our sectarian system into a nightmare in the 90s. Hezbollah preserved parts of it, part of the nightmare, and then it let go of other things it didn't need, which is really, I think, the stuff that we all complain about all the time. But the fundamental stuff, it's, and I don't mean to be so circular in this stuff, but I think it's.
I hear you in a sense that I agree with a lot of what you're saying. It's a geopolitical security apparatus, and it's I don't know, biggest informal economy in Lebanon. They have their own banking system, and this is to take into consideration when looking at it from a power relation perspective. And I feel like if we were to agree on something, is that we believe that Hezbollah is among the priority problems that we're trying to practice. It's not the only problem, and it's not the biggest of them all, in the sense that we're only focusing on it. But it's a priority, definitely. And I feel like this is where it all comes through at the end of the day.
Their power, how do they express it? They tell the people, if you are like from this specific sect, يلا تعب وصفك هون. This is why I said these two reinforce each other.
You mean the establishment and
sectarianism and Hezbollah or etc.
The ugly stuff you can reform without the bigger problem preventing reform. So I think what you're saying resonates among everyone in this country. Nobody wants a permanently corrupt, sort of nepotistic, nobody wants that. And I think it's well beyond. It should have happened long ago. But it doesn't make sense why everyone's attempts at reform keep reaching this wall. And that's why I don't think Minteshreen or any other group has the ability to jump over this wall. But I do hold a lot of respect for any group that's at least willing to address it.
Yeah.
So my tip of the hat to you guys. Well, you know what? Maybe I hope so. I will ask you. Oh, sorry, you wanted to say something?
No.
Yeah. Did you want to?
I just wanted to agree and just to remember that it's probably eventually we need to zone out and look at it from a regional perspective.
Yeah.
And the diminishing of it or not is not within any of our local hands.
Yeah. I agree.
But preparing the underground.
Yeah. To accept, to welcome it.
For a common definition of resistance among all Lebanese, preparing that underground is going to play a big role in the kind of state we want to build.
Perfect.
That's away from any definition that Hezbollah or the other Sulta parties have tried to reinforce for so many years right now.
I couldn't say it better than that, and I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. I appreciate if that is the terrain you're given to work with. That's a very noble cause right there. At least trying to shift the narrative on the ground. So I respect this. I'll ask you guys a sort of a final topic. October 17, unlike any other protest, it's woman leading. Young woman, passionate woman, political woman. And here we are, 2 out of 3, right? You have a very astute, woman-driven political dialogue, lexicon. Every event I go to, it's woman speaking, right? Or it's woman driven, which is a good thing. Why? I mean, Lebanon should be for everybody, and I think it's a very important moment for women in Lebanese politics and history. You guys are young, you're bold, you're assertive. Ghiya, I said it before. I mean, you're able to get a crowd to cheer you on in a very magical way. It wasn't just you. Lori Haitayan was equally impressive as well. I don't even remember the men in the middle. Naji. Was it Naji? I don't think so.
Naji did two episodes.
Naji, Ziyad.
Ziyad, Naji, and that's
Me
it.
and Lori, yeah.
Okay, I don't remember them. I remember you guys. You guys did a great job. Do you think there's a appetite now, even with all the constraints that we talked about, do you think there's a form of discrimination that's permanently over, and now you can talk about things that you couldn't really address before?
We want our rights.
Yeah.
And that's even not just equally to men or etc. I just want to be perceived as a human being living on this globe, بهالبلد, and giving national, it's a big topic to talk about if you want to only centralize it in that.
Well, even, I mean, I guess meaning it in whoever gets into government, that this is going to happen, that now things are at least changing for the better. Do you see it moving in that direction?
Directly? No.
No.
Not immediately, and I do not see it. A lot of people will hate me for that, but I'm being realistic. I don't see it going directly.
May I ask you why? Why do you have that?
Because you said it. They are gonna yet be elected again. We need to know that they are opposing this decision purely for political reasons. It's very obvious. And if we want to fight, I want to be realistic. I don't want to aim high. If we're gonna go in, we're not gonna go in with like half of the parliament, which we need to have this law pass.
So the old parties, you don't think will touch this issue? Yeah, what do you think about these things?
I mean, I just want to highlight something. Remember how the quota law was, the draft law was proposed in the parliament?
Yeah, right.
And even, it's funny, Inaya Azzuddin MP of Harakat Amal, she was, leading on that, as a, she's been leading on that and generally as a person. And fellow coalition members voted against her own draft. No. So this is I give this as an example to just assert and validate what Jana was saying. But I have a different view.
Yeah,
I believe that I want to zoom out of the example of the woman's national or right to nationality or to grant nationality to her children. I want to talk about a feminist perspective of October 17. We saw women leading. And I don't want to say that there were successes because women were leading, but I would say it was a success that women were leading. So we saw that. And this is a manifestation of a comprehensive and a lot of accumulated feminist efforts, if I were to say, in the grassroots realm in Lebanon, in the Lebanese political field. Because
before October 17.
Before October 17. لأنه عن جد, when it comes to grassroots, when it comes to civil society, women lead there. Why? Because there aren't the kind of challenges that the system imposes through its official institutions on how easy it is for women to reach a place where they have a participatory role in the leadership role. Why does this not translate into parliament? Because there are challenges that are far entrenched and institutionalized legally.
If they want to actually pass such a law, they would have changed the names on their lists.
Oh, meaning more women.
More women.
It's more women, or the people that actually voted against this law will be not there.
Within
there
the
will
older
be a
parties.
change. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like there's something happening. It's alternative space, which you described in a sense, civil society before October 17 was already women-led, that was clear, and that now the alternative groups is woman-dominated discourse for the right reasons.
Yeah.
It's not a prejudice against men. It's
Definitely.
it's like there's women that need to speak too, and it's happening, which is good. But I appreciate that there's a lot of nuance here, that you're able to see that the horizon's not so good for at least the ruling parties.
Yeah.
That they're even this Harakat Amal attempt doesn't get far. So what can be done now to actually make this happen? If a huge protest and so many parties emerge talking about it and it doesn't happen, does it go back to alternative space again? I mean, what is the channel now to make this an issue? Because I don't know the answer here. I don't know what.
Interesting.
Yeah,
It's a big question.
Other than talking about it, which is what everyone does, but I don't know what it could look like.
Lobbying
exactly.
for advocating for number one quota in the parliament. It's
Positive
not the best. I
discrimination,
don't want to be defined in a quota for the rest of my life. But quota policies in general, whether it's women's rights or not, even around the world, even when the African American movement was fighting slavery back then in America, there was the quota system on allowing a certain quota of African Americans to enter universities, because this is a push. This is a push against marginalized identities or communities, and women are marginalized since many years in the political realm in Lebanon. So this is the first step.
Can you imagine Minteshreen doing this post-elections? That this becomes a pressure point, even if you're not in parliament? Is there a way to do this? Lobbying as a... I mean, I don't know what it would look like.
I think that we need to compile our efforts. What happened today and how women were such brave leaders within October 17 is something that took a lot of work and efforts and awareness to reach that point, to tell each and every woman that you can raise your voice and you can ask for your rights and you can be a leader. This is.
I mean, I want to give an example on what it would look like. A very small example. Minteshreen will take part tomorrow, Friday. The episode comes out. It will take part
2 days ago
in the Model Youth Parliament organized by USG. And the Model Youth Parliament targets youth that role play as members of the parliament. They role play Tayar al-Watan al-Awni, they role play Hezbollah, they role play Minteshreen, they role play National Bloc. So they role play as alternative political movements as if they are in the parliament. And one of the topics they will tackle is the law for feminine quota in the parliament.
And
how does this correspond to your question? What we're going to do is that we're going to go and present why it's important to fight and to work towards such a law for all the right reasons,
and
with youth that still, they know the title of the law but don't really know the actual importance of it. So this is a lobbying effort, this is advocacy.
Is it trying to persuade political parties that are already established to change their tune from within? Is it like trying to get their voters to make this an issue? Because let's assume you guys are still the alternative, or you're on the outside. How do you get the inside to change their narrative so that it matches yours?
It's not a focus now on them changing. Definitely when they saw that actually, for example, 17 Tishrin wanted a non-sectarian narrative, they started talking about دولة مدنية. So when they see that they might lose some of their power for a specific reason, they might shift. Yes, I do agree with you on that. That's why we need to always lobby and continue lobbying for this. But mainly, we're not going there to actually. I don't want to talk to address them. I want to address their people. I want to talk to their people because I won't be able to reform their parties. Their own people need to reform their own parties and their own participants and or members that are women, they deserve to be as leaders within their parties and not only مرته للزعيم أو فلان أو فلان أو فلان.
Yeah.
And I think it would look like, it would look like, and the way it will be done is going to be done the same way any other point on political programs of the emerging political movements will be done as well. So it's a challenge to get it inside. The same way it's a challenge to fight for a law for independent judiciary system. It's all under the same category.
Yeah, I also think it's well overdue. It's something that people should not even be talking about in 2022. Yeah, but we're still talking about it. So it means that I appreciate all the avenues to make change happen, which is why this group to me is important. I'll wrap it up with a question that you touched on, Jana, but I'm going to, as much as you can say, you're 23?
Yeah.
Ghiya, you're 22. Okay, so born in 1999?
98.
Okay, so that's the math.
30.
Get mental.
I can do this. Your presence in Lebanese politics compared to Lebanon's history is a very small sliver of time. Mine is also very small. I have my own reasons why I've ended up in this world. You shared a bit about your family dynamics, but I'm curious, Jana, what is your personal reasons for even doing this to begin with? Not by seeing a protest and you want to jump into it, not that. More what drove you to even appreciate Samir Asir? What is the spark within you?
If you ask my mom, she'll tell you she got it from her grandpa.
Oh, so she got it as well from her grandpa.
Me.
Oh, you got it from your grandpa. Oh, okay.
My grandpa was someone that actually got killed, got assassinated, and he was someone who actually, as per what the stories claim, that he dared to actually defy شو عم بيصير بالجنوب وشو عم بيصير بhis own party, which was كان وقتها القومي السوري. Yeah. And yet they assassinated him. هلا what will my and be I don't know. But I've been raised on, I think, that mythology of defying what is wrong and being aware, because I used to say I wanted to when I was small I wanted to be a politician. Yet I ended up doing psychology, but
it's the same thing.
Yeah, I know. We treat them.
Healing wounds.
Yeah, but if I may reflect on my decision of how I decided. Yes, I didn't major in political science, but I decided to take this هالمعترك يعني السياسة. I started by reading books, which was كان عندي أنطون سعادة كتبه أول شيء بلشت أقريهم, and then I moved to okay, what is around me. So then I continued to Gibran Twaini. I read more about Samir Asir, and I think that researching and me identifying with what they were saying, مع إنه ما كنت يمكن كتير بفهم, بس ولكن the whole aspiration of what they wanted to build of, or what Lebanon wanted, they aimed to. It drove me to have this actually هيدا الانحياز for them and read more and understand more what they are talking about.
Your grandfather was assassinated within the party? Or did I get that right? Or he was...
he was assassinated because my mother tells me this story. Once he told my grandma, if you want بدي عيطي لي للولاد, I'm gonna say it in Arabic, عيطي لي للولاد خليني يجوا يقعدوا. اجوا قالت له شو بدك منهم؟ قال لها انه بدي اسالهم سؤال. They did that exercise. قال لهم وهن they were small, mom doesn't very remember a lot يعني things. قال لهم انه بدكم بس يموت بيكم يقولوا الله يرحمه كان انه منيح, ولا بدكم يقولوا الله يرحمه كان عميل. So that was the debate. And yes, it was for me. The stories I heard, and now when I go to the south, And when they say, حفيدته لسامي أسماء, I don't know my grandfather and I do not align. Once we went with the Minteshreen to the Hibariye and they told everyone that هيدا حفيدته لسامي سامي أسماء, قالوا له رفيقة. قلت لهم لا ما رفيقة. I have different political point of views, but the whole history of change and defying change and okay, yes, I ended up reading for Samir Asir and Gibran Twain and etc. We have very يعني معقد السياسة عندنا بالبيت, بس إنه living on these stories, it got me to where I am today and identifying with the discourse and the narrative of such people and such amazing minds.
You have a unique advantage that you're able to have two sides of the spectrum within one family and within one person. In a way, you're growing up with that. That's very unique in what we're going through, at least right now. Definitely. You're able to come. You at least maybe have some emotions when it comes to appreciating the other side.
No, that this I wasn't able of why the reasons may, but I grew up on these stories, and with my psychologist, I always ask her why I am in the front lines. I do not understand. I want to understand. What's my motive? What's this impulse? And then
she goes talks to her therapist then about why does this person keep coming to me with all of Lebanon's problems.
We talked about what was I raised on as a narrative and as a discourse, and I understood that in a fictional way I am stuck with the image of the person. I believe that maybe if he stayed, I don't know, if he was still alive, a change.
See, the reason why you like this man is because he's a leftist sovereigntist. And that is not necessarily the same borders as Syria, the way that party imagines them, but he was so sympathetic to the Syrian cause, the Palestinian cause, and I think, if I remember right, his mom is Lebanese. His mom is Palestinian. His father is There's a Syrian and Palestinian within him, and his father was Palestinian, right? Christian, who became Lebanese. His mom is Syrian, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I got this right. With a French passport.
Yeah, I remember this.
Living in Ras Beirut, or not living in Ras Beirut, sorry, frequenting Hamra.
Imagine what stories he had to say.
Frequenting Al Missouri hangout places too, I hope I got that right. I just don't remember exactly how it works, but he's Palestinian, Syrian, French, with a Lebanese passport.
As per what I remember, he's Palestinian, Lebanese, French. I don't know
Palestinian,
if he
Lebanese,
had
French.
That
sounds right,
Yeah, I don't know if he had Syrian.
Yeah.
But
then, you know what? You're probably right. No, but it explains why you're drawn to this kind of person. Thank you for letting me know these things. I'll make the quote adjusted better. Ghiya, I know only a little about you and why you would end up in politics, but I think I know the reason. But I want to hear it from you.
Okay. I grew up in a politically motivated or engaged family, and I grew up in a house that all the salon meetings and family lunches talked about the history of Lebanon and politics, and it was all we talked about. So I grew up with that mind. But I was 14 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And a very close relative of mine, he was 28 I think at the time, was shot, assassinated, killed for speaking out in front of the Iranian embassy in Lebanon, 2013, June 9. His name was Hashim Salman. And I was 14 years old at the time, so my political knowledge was very limited. My political understanding of the realm and the cave of Lebanon was very limited. But I saw someone who I looked up towards in terms of bravery, in terms of speaking his mind, regardless what that mind was, in a very in southern Lebanon. So this says something about bravery and courage. So when I saw this man killed, beaten to death for 30 minutes straight, shot 3 times, I got angry.
You were there?
I was not there, but everything was documented in video.
And sorry, this is your close relative?
Yeah, he's relative to the family. He is the brother of my brother-in-law, and at the same time, his father is the cousin of my grandfather, who was also assassinated during the Civil War. So
your grandfather?
Yes. Ghiya El Assaad, he was assassinated in front of our house in Al-Taiba because they were attacking it. So that's on the side. So when I saw that, I got angry because I saw a lot of what I thought was patriotism in Hashem. I saw a good image of Lebanon in Hashem, and I saw a young man, very young, trying to translate that into political activism. So it shook me, and I got angry, and I wanted to understand more. Why was it done? Why did they do that? Why was he put down? What is this Lebanon that I live in that, I'm 14, I just discovered how deadly it is. I got angry, but I got more curious, and I got more patriotic. And it grew with me. I'm not going to say the anger grew with me. I'm going to say the patriotism grew with me because I stopped being angry. I got into university. I took a more objective point of view. And at the time, I romanticized the Lebanese duo كتير. And I had shifting points of view at the time. Let's not remember that. But, I'm not, this is my true colors.
That's so, before the...
No, that was after I got less angry and I was discovering myself politically. But I wanted to see Lebanon in Hashem's eyes. The same way Hashem saw it, the same way my grandfather saw it, the same way a lot of my family saw it, the same way my father saw it and my mother saw it, because we share a lot of the same political views. And I feel like this is what drove me to become politically curious and what drove me to love my country for what it is and fight whoever is trying to bring it down. And that's my motive. And that's why I became politically active.
You see, the three of us are in politics for reasons that we don't express. Okay, so the three of us have this problem. That's why I think that problem that removes people from this country who I'm going to guess were doing the right thing. These people are assassinated because they're doing something good. If you don't get rid of that problem, you end up with that. Three families that don't know each other. I wouldn't have known the intimacies without asking you, but I felt it. With you, Ghiya, I think I knew it by accident. But that is not normal politics. I think the goal should be getting to normal politics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's why I always emphasize that if you're able to ignore what's killing Lebanese from getting there, you're missing the whole story. Which is why I respect Minteshreen for talking about it, for being open about the most sensitive subject that is impacting all of us, and for producing a great team like you guys, and a lot of members that I've grown accustomed to. Now they're friends, and now I'm their therapist sometimes too.
Allow me to say one thing. That also proves the point that the personal is political. Yeah. Everything is political. Definitely. And we don't have a choice.
I want it to be less personal. Then we don't have to worry about the old things that impact all of us. And then we can forget whether we're sectarian or secular. We can just live normal lives. There's something about normalcy which I think is part of the story, and that's why people keep trying. It's not they're not aiming for the stars. They want normal.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's a shame that normal is beyond our reach.
I would have said it better.
Be in our reach soon,
hopefully.
I hope so.
We hope so.
Thank you for ending it on a positive note. I always look for that positive note. Jana, Ghiya, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronnie.
Thank you.